Welcome to the first of two video lectures covering Chapter 4 of Kory Floyd's Interpersonal Communication. Warning, warning, this video will be quite long, and I am sorry for that. It's just so much to cover. I put a break in the middle if you need it. Now, in this first video, I'm going to briefly discuss the concept of perception, and then not so briefly, focus in on the various forces that influence our perception. First, interpersonal perception is what happens when we try to make meaning from the people we communicate with. We use perception to try to understand what is happening in our world, and particularly in the various relationships that we engage in. Whether it be with friends, family, romantic partners, classmates, teachers, coworkers, or even just the people we randomly encounter as we go through life. The barista at the coffee shop, the checkout clerk at the grocery store, or the people we happen to make eye contact with as we walk around a college campus or workplace. We are constantly trying to decode what it is we are experiencing. This is interpersonal perception. Now, as Floyd points out, there are 6 or 7, depending on how you count, fundamental forces that shape our interpersonal perception. I'm going to walk through each of these forces with you. The first is stereotyping. I know we throw this word around a lot, and we probably all have an idea in our minds what we mean by stereotyping. Usually it's used in a pretty negative context, but for the purpose of this class, we're going to try to set aside any negativity we might have associated with this term in the past and look at it in a more objective way. Stereotyping is simply what happens when we make a generalization about a group of people and then apply that generalization to an individual member of that group. Floyd outlines a 3-step process of stereotyping. Now, please review and learn this process because we'll be referencing this throughout the rest of our course. The first step is to identify a group we believe somebody belongs to. You see somebody that you think is white, like me, and you say, okay, Patrick is white. The second step is recall a generalization about that group of people. In this case, you say to yourself, oh, white people, they can't dance. Then the third step is to apply that generalization back to the individual that you identified with the group to begin with. Oh, Patrick is white. White people can't dance. Therefore, Patrick can't dance. Well, goes to show how wrong you are. Check it out. Okay, maybe I do fit into that stereotype for now, but I'm working on it. Okay, but seriously, stereotyping is a serious topic, and it's important to remember that stereotyping has some inherent flaws. One of the big ones is that there is variation within any group. Even if we had some kind of study showing that many white people can't dance, and to be clear, I don't have any such study, we would be able to come up with counterexamples of white people who can dance. Remember way back in Chapter 2, we were talking about generalized research about men and women. For example, that women are more likely than men to express emotion, or that men were more likely than women to express linguistic violence. A lot of you pointed out that you can think of counterexamples, maybe even amongst yourselves, of the opposite being true. Another problem with stereotyping is that some stereotypes are just wrong and are based on bias surrounding age, race, religion, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, political affiliation, and the list goes on and on and on. And stereotypes can often be used to discriminate against people in a negative way. That's definitely bad. So, stereotypes are horrible then, right? Well, not necessarily. They are actually useful shortcuts to try to help us reduce uncertainty about people as we meet them. As long as we keep an open mind about these stereotypes as we go forward and alter our feelings about an individual person as we learn more about them, we'll be just fine. However, if we let stereotypes rule our perception, we close ourselves off from really getting to know the person behind the group we have stereotyped them from. Our next 2 forces of interpersonal perception are the primacy and recency effect. Very simply, the primacy effect is giving more weight to the first experience you have of another person, and weighing that perception as more important than your later experiences. Conversely, recency effect is taking your most recent experiences as weighted more than earlier experiences. As an example, if your first impression of me, as your teacher, was very positive, that would help you overlook some mistakes that I might will make later on. That is the primacy effect in play. However, if I did something really, really bad, say I yelled at the whole class one day out of the blue, you may now view me in a very negative light. Regardless of what I did on that first day, you now have a negative impression of me. That would be recency effect. So you might be asking yourself, what is stronger, primacy effect or recency effect? Well, they seem to be in conflict with each other, right? Well, neither is necessarily stronger. They're about equally weighted. What we do know, generally speaking, is that your first and your last impressions are stronger than all of those middle impressions. Whew! This is a long video already. If I were you, I'd take a quick focus break. Go ahead, pause the video. I'll just grab a swig of water and wait for you to get back. Okay, we're back. Ready to go. Let's crush the rest of this video then. The next force of perception is called perceptual sets. This is a tricky one, and for a long time I really struggled to understand it, so if you have trouble with it too, that's okay. Basically, a perceptual set is a predisposition to perceive what we expect to perceive. Google optical illusions and you'll find many examples that really test your perceptual sets. The thing is, we have a predisposition to perceive certain people in certain ways. For example, if you grew up going to religious private schools, your teachers were probably all religious. That's a pretty common stereotype that tends to hold up, though not 100% for sure. If the only kinds of teachers you ever had were religious, and then you went to a non-religious college, you would probably still expect your teachers to be religious. This is because you've associated teachers with religion. If you came into my class and you heard me talking about love and how much we should love others, and yes, I really do believe we should do that, you would naturally assume this is just me sharing an extension of my religious beliefs. Then it would probably greatly surprise you that I am not religious at all. Perceptual sets can trip us up like that sometimes. Now, is this good or bad? It's neither. Just something to be aware of. We need to be open to the idea that sometimes what we expect to see won't be what we're actually seeing. The next force we'll explore is called egocentrism. This is another term that, like stereotyping, we have a pretty negative feeling about. Nobody wants to feel like they're egocentric. I hate to break it to you, but we're all egocentric. You, me, that guy standing behind you. Oh, look out! Nah, you wouldn't fall for that, would you? But seriously, egocentrism simply means the inability to take another person's perspective. This is so common because, you know, it's hard to take somebody else's perspective. I'm the only one who's lived my life. How could you truly take my perspective? Now, you're the only one who's lived your life. How could I take your perspective? That's tough, but we can if we try really hard. There's something called being alter-centric, and yeah, spell check won't like it when you type that one, but being alter-centric simply means trying to focus on the perspective of another person. Those of us that really master empathy can get there. Personally, I try to get there every day. But if you don't get there, that's okay. Egocentrism is required for our survival on some level. If we were truly 100% alter-centric, we would give all of our food, all of our money, all of our clothes, all of our belongings away to those more in need. Because we would constantly be feeling for people that have it worse than us. And there are always people that have it worse than us. So we need to be careful with that. A little egocentrism is healthy. Okay, almost to the end, y'all. If you need to, you can take another break. Pause me anytime. But if you're ready, let's talk about positivity and negativity bias. Much like primacy and recency effect, these are two sides of the same coin. In fact, primacy and recency often go hand in hand with positivity and negativity bias. That's because if you have a really bad first impression of somebody, you'll probably develop a negativity bias of that person, which means that anything they do, you'll assign it a negative value. Alternately, if you had a really good first impression, you'll probably have a positivity bias. Everything they do will be a positive thing. This happens a lot in relationships at the beginning. When you first fall in love and all the hormones are making you feel squishy for your new partner, but sometimes that partner is kind of a jerk. And your friends who don't share your positivity bias might be able to see who that person is as somebody who's no good for you. Negativity bias can have the same effect. This happened to me once with a student in a previous semester. I made a pretty bad mistake with the student. and said something that really hurt their feelings. Now, to be clear, I didn't intend to hurt their feelings. But the thing about perception is that it's not about your intention. It's about how the communication was perceived by the other person that is more important. I tried to apologize, but no matter what I did, the student had a major negativity bias, and they assumed that everything I did was just me being a jerk some more. I tell you this so that you can see that it's very important to be aware of how our communication might be perceived. It's tough, but so vital. Wow, this video was so long. I appreciate you getting all the way to the end. And just to reward you for sitting through this whole thing, send me an email saying, I watched the video, I want the points. And I'll give you some optional participation points for your struggle. But wait, there is one more video. I promise it will be much shorter. See you soon.